Stay tuned for Time to Talk with host Jennifer Graziano of Zion Memorial Chapel and Cox and Graziano Funeral Homes. Jennifer is here to discuss a sensitive subject we all need to talk and think about. Here now is Jennifer Graziano and Time to Talk.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's time to talk with me, Jen Graziano. I'm a licensed funeral director and attorney who oversees my family's funeral homes, Cox and Graziano of both Mamaroneck and Greenwich, the Zion Memorial Chapel of Westchester, and now the Fred D. Knapp Funeral Home, also of Greenwich. It is a joy and honor for me to come to you and bring this podcast where we discuss important topics and sensitive subjects that we all need to pause and reflect upon at some point. And for a long time now, this show has been a platform to do so. It is wonderful to be back, sharing information and speaking to the guests that have helped so many people and that I'm so honored to work with as well through my role in my industry. And one of our recurring guests, insightful guests, it's been a joy to have her on many, many times on the show, is Christa Picciano-Daniello, the Senior Vice President of Sales for The Osborn in Rye. The Osborn is a special place indeed. So much can be said. But Christa, welcome back, first of all.
Thank you, Jen. I'm always happy to be back and talk about a lot of these important subjects.
They are important subjects. And we've spoken over the years. I mean, I go back to 4 years ago when we were taking our act on the road kind of during COVID, and we were getting together with a bunch of professionals through our respective industries. We were seeing a lot of parallels and a lot of room for advice, education, and information. And we kept that going through some tough times. And now it seems to be that we're on the other side of it. Although the world that we're in, I have no idea.
Oh, gosh. I don't know. That we could do a whole show just on that, Jen.
A show for another time.
Exactly.
But with that said, tell us a bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about the Osborn before we launch into the meat of the conversation today.
You got it. Okay. So the Osborn is here in Rye. We're actually on 56 beautiful acres. We're actually also an arboretum. We're a continuum of care. And I think, again, people sort of don't really understand a lot of the lingo, but basically we're a full continuum. What that means is on one campus, you have everything from independent living, which are people who are just living independently, enjoying their lives, being active. We offer licensed assisted living. We offer licensed memory care. We offer a licensed outpatient and inpatient rehab in our pavilion, which is both for long-term and short-term care. And we even have 2 actual licensed agencies for home care, one in Connecticut. Jen, we're taking after you. One here in Westchester and then one in Fairfield, Connecticut. So we really sort of cover everything, which is why we're called a full continuum of care. And as you know, my friend, we've been together for a long time in this industry. I've been here for about 25 years. So, we've seen a lot of changes, as you mentioned, throughout these years, COVID, pre-COVID, post-COVID, you name it. I think it's like BC, AD, now it's going to be pre-COVID, post-COVID, the world that we're living in now. So very interesting changes that we've seen throughout these years.
The world is certainly divided into 2 parts, the world before 2020 and then the circus that has ensued after. But so let's talk about how your landscape has changed, because what I think, among the myriad of issues that the ancillary issues, the COVID casualties, I call them, the isolation, how that led to cognitive decline for so many seniors. I mean, these are the unspoken tragedies, in my opinion, enough yet. And all the things that triggered from there. But when we lost access to our loved ones, when we lost access to, to help them make medical decisions, legal decisions, we lost physical access to them. It started to raise the issue of, do we have plans in place? And the second part, who have we designated to execute? So it really opened up this whole dialogue that it's time that we start talking specifically about that which is uncomfortable. Give us your 30,000-foot view.
Oh my gosh. Jen, I mean, I can't tell you enough. in 25 years, how many people have walked through the door? And the one thing you always hear, and probably the reason that keeps people from coming to see you before they need to see you, or coming to see us before they think they need to see us, is because everybody says, I don't need it. I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I'm not ready to make a plan. I'm not ready. And I think it was, if I remember correctly, it was Ben Franklin who said, if you fail to plan, then you're planning to fail. I mean,
Yep.
I don't know that there's one quote that really sums it up as well. But I think what COVID really did, and what you were referring to, is it really showed people, okay, something can happen at any time. And everybody can say, well, I'm great today. I don't need anything. But we've seen now that can change overnight. And so you had people that you saw, right, didn't have plans, whether it was funeral plans, whether it was advanced directives, so important. Healthcare proxies, do not resuscitates, moving wills. I mean, without any of that spelled out, who's going to make those important decisions for you? Who have you deemed to make those? What are the things that you want to do? And I think that COVID really brought to light just how dependent we are on people. We really need people. I mean, you said it yourself, the isolation, the impact that isolation had on people's cognitive, especially older adults, was incredible. That was probably one of the biggest things that nobody saw until about a year later, because everybody was focused on, the physical at that point. But you're 100% right. So what happens if you, your mother, your father go into a hospital? Do they want to be on a respirator? Do they want to live, with a tube? What are the things that you want? And that really came to light, Jen. You and I talked about that a lot during COVID, and we just saw so much crisis going on and everybody trying to kind of get out of that.
Again, I mean, and the effects ran the gamut, because on the younger side, when you take our youth, you see our children who lost foundational years, the building blocks of education, which also include the socialization component. There's a thing called COVID children now who are probably entering the preschool, but I see it with my daughter who's in middle school. She lost some foundational years, building block academic years. All of these kids, feel like a year behind. Then you come to the senior end, it probably advanced their cognitive age a little bit. We don't realize how much community really matters. And when you take your youth and your seniors and we removed everybody from the community, the ripple effect, I mean, again, it's going to be a long time felt. But it also begs it prompts a discussion of community when you are selecting this type of living, when it's time to transition from the home to a more communal living, or to transition to something with a continuum of care, right, where you can really, be in the sunset of your life, but allow for the different parts of the sunset. It starts to make you think, what do you look for? What are the factors, do you feel, Christa, the biggest factors that drive and influence the decision of where to go for assisted living?
Well, so I think it's different depending on what level you're looking to come in. I always tell people, whether you're coming to the Osborn or not, you want to go to a place before you need it. You want to go somewhere where you can take advantage of all the wonderful things that a place has to offer. So you want to start out in independent living. I mean, that's the hope, because if you start out in independent living, what you're doing is you're not giving up anything. You're actually getting rid of, I like to say, you're getting rid of the have tos for the want tos. So it's like you have this house, and we live on the East Coast, and there's snow and the roof, and we've got driveways to deal with, and the dishwasher doesn't work. So it's like, why not get rid of all of those have tos and come to a community where it's independent living, where you get to really enjoy life. You can go to lectures, you can see concerts, you can be on committees. I mean, you could do as much as if you were on vacation. It's really, I like to call it resort style living. So I think for independent people, back to your original question, they come to a community mostly because it's either where they were originally from, and that's the town or the area they're comfortable in, or their children are in that area. Because usually as you get older, I think you've probably seen it too, in Florida, we have many of our residents go out to Florida and they retire. And then it's called the second wave of retirement. So they went out to Florida, maybe 10, 15 years, and now they're coming back to be closer to their kids again. So that's a big phenomenon that we see a lot happening probably within the last 5 to 8 years. That's been a change from 25 years ago. People retired and that was it. Well, that's not it anymore because people are living longer now and they're living healthier longer.
So a paradigm shift too. I mean, in terms of retirement, like people would work until, let's say the 75 and then go then. They were setting out for that Florida journey later. Now you see people in their 50s ready to hang up their hat and go to Florida. And a lot of it is because it's the pressure cooking life that we live in. Like people want out. And then, like you say, so you do, if you go at 50 or 55, 60, you do that for 15, 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And now, knowing that, again, the sunset is arguably upon you, you want to be closer to your family. And I've seen that firsthand quite often. Like you said, it's probably about I think that's a pretty good number to couch that at, 5 to 8 years.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think right now too, I think you hear in the news all the time, silver tsunami. I mean, what does that basically mean? It really is it's the largest population of boomers that are turning 65. And so if you look at it, people who were age 65 grew from, actually, I think it was 2010 to 2020. It reached 55.8 million. It was a 38.6 increase in 10 years from 2000. Exactly. So it tells you a lot. It tells you that people are living longer. So even if people are moving out to Florida at 65, you're still spending 15 years there. And you're coming back here now when you're 80 years old. But guess what? You're still active. It doesn't mean you're coming back because maybe your health is declining, but maybe your spouses are. Maybe your friends have passed away out there, but you really want to be close to family so that if and when something happens, you're prepared. I think that's what you and I are talking about. It's being prepared. It's making those decisions when you have the ability to make the decisions that you want to make.
It is so true. And being in control and your voice being heard, whether it's your healthcare, your legal affairs, your funeral plans, so important. I was saying there's so much, separate conversation, but there's been a lot of talk in the news about guardianship and conservatorship and abuses of power. And then it just leads to all these other discussions about, abuses of power in general with the elderly, who's in control of your finances, of your health, of your legal affairs. You need to be in that driver's seat for as long as you can. Yes. And while you're in that driver's seat, that's when you have to be contemplating, okay, so when I can't be in the driver's seat anymore and I have to switch to the passenger, who's going to take the wheel for me? And you can't underscore the weight of that decision, that you could live your whole life in terms of building something and and working towards something that could really be depleted or your choices of where you want to live or what your hopes would be. It could all go away if these decisions are not left in the most honest, capable, and proper hands. So the hard part of this is taking you when you're healthy and happy and life is great and putting a temporary pause to say, we have to think about what if life wasn't so great. Like nobody wants to think about something sad. Right. No one wants to think, especially when things are great. And that's the irony. That's when you have to think about it.
Exactly.
So we know more now than we did years ago. We know we're so much more versed in options, decisions. I think so much of it comes from removing the stigma that having these conversations doesn't signify the end is by any means near.
Right.
If anything, you'll be guaranteeing more longevity or quality to your years by eliminating this headache conversation.
That's right. You know, what
Well,
you
how do we do it?
Yeah, I mean, and you just said something that I caught that you were just saying is, you know, the longevity. And do you know that there's actually statistics and that there's actually been studies done, and people who live in independent living active communities actually live about 1 to 1.5 years longer and healthier. I think that that is the important thing. You know, I mean, everybody would say, well, why do I want to live long if I'm not going to be healthier? The whole point of getting to an independent community is so that you remain active, because it's very difficult. Say you're not driving, or it's winter and you can't drive, or, you know, you're limited, you can't drive at night. Isn't it nice to have all these activities, your gym, your pool, clubs, things that you can do no matter what's going outside around you? But it's all still there, so that you're not only aging and being taken care of, but you're aging healthier. And I think that that's a really important aspect of independent living that people do not realize. And I have to tell you, there's this one, I always tell people this when I'm doing a talk or a presentation, somebody asks me to speak, and there's this cartoon that I refer to, because we all don't see ourselves as our age. That does not change when you're seniors. I have 90-year-olds that say, I'm not old enough yet, I'm too young. And I tell everybody this great cartoon, it's called Pickles. And basically what it is, there's this great couple and they're sitting at a bar and they're talking to each other. And the husband looks at his wife and he says, honey, look at that couple at the end of the bar. You know, they look so old. And she looks at him, she goes, honey, you realize that's a mirror at the end of the bar. And I think it's really reflective of our society, honestly, and how we see ourselves within the society. And, you know, it's fine to see ourselves that way. Shoot, I want to be 21 forever. That's how I feel, right? But it's like we tell our kids, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. So you want to be in control, like you said, of those decisions while you have the ability, because now statistics say if you're a couple living to 65 and you're healthy at 65 years old, there is the highest level of expectancy that you're going to live to 95 or beyond. What does that tell you?
That's you got 3 decades. You got a lot of time ahead of you. So you know, again, quantity of years is a beautiful thing, but not without the quality. They go hand in hand.
That's
and
right.
So okay, so now let's say you're still with your spouse is still living. You have a home, or you have a townhouse, or you've downsized already. Let's say you've done the downsize when the kids have left. So now you're fine. You know, you have a manageable home. What now makes you say it's time for that step of independent living? What's usually the trigger there?
Usually the trigger is, I'm tired of taking care of my house. I can't do it anymore. Even in a townhouse, it's the isolation. I think it's not feeling like, even though you're in a townhouse, you know, whether, for instance, I'm going to give you an example. I have a couple that we've been working with, and they're generally very healthy, but the wife had a fall and she had a very severe fracture. She needed rehab. She needed a lot of help afterwards. And she hadn't kind of come back the way that the husband thought. Luckily, they were on our wait list. So they had an option. They came in for short-term rehab. We got them in for their short-term rehab, which is covered under Medicare. And then he said to me, you know what? I've been on the wait list for about a year. It's now time. I really need to think about this, because it really made me understand anything can happen at any time. So I think they're lucky in their instance. That was a hip. She's getting better. They're moving in. But what if it's a stroke now? Now what if you can't go into independent living? Fine. You can still come into an assisted living. That's the next portion, right? Like at the Osborn or somewhere, there's assisted living. That's that in between where you're not really independent, but you're not a nursing home. I don't need 24-hour care, but I need an apartment and I need somebody to kind of come in and check on me throughout the day. Maybe I need some help getting dressed, getting my meals together. So once you get there, if you're in a crisis, you may not have a lot of the options as if you already moved into a community, because you're only going to have what's available to you now. So the whole point in moving to an independent community when you can is twofold. It's, I want to take advantage of all of the activity and all of the socialization and all of the exercise and all of the programs without all of the things that I have to do to maintain a house. But I also want to know if something happens to me, no matter what it is, I'm taken care of at that place. There's no worries. And that also, another trigger is that helps your kids. It really does. You're giving them a gift by you choosing where you're going to be and them not having to worry, what if something happens to dad? Mom's not going to be okay. You're giving them a gift, just like in your business. Jen, I know I called you when, unfortunately, my mother-in-law had passed away. She just turned 75 years old.
Right. She was so young.
Right. And it was so completely unexpected. Luckily, she made all of her plans. Most 75-year-olds do not make all of their plans. But
no, because it's so young. It
that was
really
a gift.
is.
That was a gift to my husband and to his brother, because, they wouldn't have been capable. You're already dealing with that. How capable are you to be able to deal with that whole planning if you haven't done it in advance?
Well, I always say there's such a different arrangement when the decedent had really let their wishes known. It's this is what mom wants versus what mom had wanted. In my case, you're dealing with sadness, which impairs your thought process anyways, grief and sadness. No one's thinking clearly. In your case, if the decision is made with clarity of mind and, okay, this might be time, you're operating at full mental capacity. When the crisis sets in, it's the same reaction as the grief. It's impairing your good judgment. Your hasty decisions are never the best decisions. They're just, in fact, that decisions in haste. Let's just do something. I deal with a lot of people. And again, I always contact you. I think so highly of the Osborn and my years of experience with dealing with various facilities. You are the hallmark of care.
Thank
and
you.
I'll say that to anybody, not just because you're virtually in front of me. But it's when I'm calling you, it's because someone's called me in a panic to call you. Nobody wants to think of this. I think a lot of times you have to have kind of a life-changing event to make you think. Like we said, COVID was a life-changing event. Yes. I lost my mom at 6 when my mom was 67. My mom's grandmother lived till 94. So you always operate with, okay, there's longevity in my family. Then you really, my mom's mom passed at 71 and my mom passed at 67. And it does make you start to think about things differently. And nobody's advocating to be morose and somber and the world's coming to an end. That's not this conversation. It's
absolutely
make a plan. I would say when people come in to make pre-arrangements, they say, what do I do next? I'm like, go to lunch. Go out. It's in a drawer. It's done. And you have that peace of mind. And like I said, what a difference to sit with adult children, when that plan is there. So in terms of making this plan, if we were going to break down, what are you 65 when you start to think this? Are you 60? Are you 70? Or if you're 70 and you haven't thought about it at all, let's just try to give them a marker. When do we start?
I mean, to be honest with you, so there's a couple things that I tell people all the time, and one of them has to do with long-term care insurance. I mean, I have nothing to do with long-term care insurance, but I can tell you that over the years, I always say, now I'm going to be 55 this year. I mean, I don't mind saying my age. It's fine. It is what it is.
That's amazing.
Right. Because again, in my brain, I'm 21, so it's okay. But I tell people in your 50s, I mean, shoot, I'm getting like mail now for AARP. I'm like, what the heck is going on? What? Anyway, what I would say about that, though, is first step is think about getting long-term care insurance. It makes a huge difference if you can afford it.
But also when you qualify, you're going to qualify in your 50s.
Correct.
So, once you're in, correct, you're in, that the care is going to follow you.
Exactly.
But getting in at 55, you're getting in with a lower premium, a healthy 55.
Exactly. And that's why that first step to me is that. It's like, hey, listen, if you're in your 50s, so I talk to a lot of the adult influencers who'll come in about their parents, and I'm like, how about you? Have you started to think at least about that element of it? So that's the one that starts a little bit earlier. I think today is different than 20 years ago. I think 20 years ago, I would have said at 65, you start looking for retirement communities. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think that really starts probably in your mid 70s. Probably around 75 is when people are starting to just start looking, because that search goes, I would say, generally from 2 to 4 years, to be quite honest.
That's just a search. That's not usually the wait level time. Like if somebody tells you, Christa, I mean, I get every facility is different. You have a much more sought after, desirable community. But if somebody comes to you today for the independent portion, what are they looking at for in terms of time?
Well, it really depends on what's available. And that's why I say plan, right? Like if you find a place you like, go on their wait lists. Because if you want a large apartment that I get people all the time that I would like the largest apartment that overlooks the garden, that has the south view with the sun in the morning. And I say, oh my gosh, okay, maybe there's one of those on the entire campus. You want to get on a wait list for that one, because people do. Listen, it's going to be where you live. I understand it. But if that's the case, you really want to get on a wait list earlier, because you don't know what's going to be available once you're ready to make that move. So if you said to me, what can I do right now? It really depends, again, on what you're looking for. Are you looking for a 1-bedroom? Maybe that's more ready available. Are you looking for a garden home? That might take a little bit longer. It really depends, which is why I think you and I are saying you got to plan, so that if you have a frame of mind of what you're looking for, you go, you visit communities. Once you figure out the community you like, which is usually that first step at 75, you're starting to kind of visit communities, get a feel. What does it feel? It's like college. It's going the opposite way.
I was gonna say, you get to also, just like when you looked at college, you had your voice, right? And your parents came with you. It's a little shift now. You're taking your kids with you probably, but have your voice. But it is, it's interesting, like you said, like the shift, the age related shift, that whereas years ago it would be 60s, now 70s. I always laugh. There was a meme somewhere about the Golden Girls, one of my favorites.
Oh my God, it's my favorite
hands down. It's I want to say it's actually my favorite show.
It is.
I grew up on it. My daughter, like 12 years old, loves them all. But it's funny, there was something that said, like, this is what 50 looked like 40 years ago. So if you think about it, like,
oh my God.
I'd like to think but it shows you that 50 is much younger now. 50 is the new 40. So 70 is the new 60. So everything shifts. Now, as our time is coming to a close, if people are thinking, like, I know you guys have events constantly. Are they open to the public? Is that a good way to kind of step in and see for yourself what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few ways. I think you can always call the sales office. I think you guys have the number, which is, and the website, which also has our number, the www.theosborn.org. And you call the sales office, because we have events. For instance, there's an event this Wednesday, which is called From Overwhelmed to Overjoyed. And it's a real estate expert and also a downsizer and organizing company. And they're just telling you about, what are some planning that you can do before you're even thinking about coming to a community to start getting ready. We have a lot of great programs. We have some authors. We have, I can't even tell you, there's so much on a calendar. Just give us a call and we can invite you in. And it's not selling. You just come in, again, get a feel for the community and the people, and you'd be surprised.
It's an education. I even say that to people too, who come in for pre-planning. Even if you don't do anything, just come in. You walk out with an education. You walk in with trepidation and questions, and then you walk out with, like, you're breathing, and it's you walked in a little more informed. You walk out more informed than you walked in. But
oh, there you go. Look, see, like, even the Osborn.
I knew it was coming. I had faith in him. I was like, wait for it, and that's
so I know. One thing I know, we're wrapping up, but the Wellspring, because people say, what's Wellspring? It's kind of what we call our wellness sort of series, and there are so many great events, Wellspring events, as you just saw. There's some speakers and some great things that are open. Those are all open to the community. So come in
and they're wonderful. It is a beautiful place. It really is. And I will tell you, I've never, it's always great to hear what other people say. I've never heard a bad experience from anybody who's ever been a resident. And I know my family's been at Cox-Graziano for 43 years now, and that's how long our relationship predates. I know our predecessor had a relationship with you, but so in all that time, it's been nothing but positive. So if that's not consistency and an amazing track record, I don't know what is. But I think our message today, as it always is, Christa, this I love to work with you, and I love to talk with you and educate with you. It's plan ahead. Make a plan.
Right, exactly.
Plan. That's all we do in our lives is plan. But but again, what happens when you don't? Just think, as hard as it is, you think it is to broach this conversation with your parents or your loved ones, what happens when you don't? I promise you that's harder.
It is.
Than getting this out.
It is.
So we're gonna keep our act on the road. I know we'll do
absolutely
more. We're working on something together. So when that comes out, we'll certainly inform everyone. But I thank you for your time and all the great things you're doing at the Osborn there. Wonderful.
You too, you know, great partners for us. And personally, I thank you because, like you said, in a very difficult time, let me tell you something. It matters who you're talking to when it comes to the job that you guys do. It's incredible to have somebody who really cares. So make that plan early so you know that your planning is doing the right thing before you need it.
Thanks, Christa. We'll talk soon. Once again, everybody, learn more at the Osborn at theosborn.org. We'll replay that on the bottom as well for you. And this is Jen Graziano, thanking you for taking the time to listen as we took the time to talk. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.